All right, friends. So just to let you know very quickly, I do have two pet birds. I did put one of them away, so he should be quiet. The other one cannot be contained in a cage. He is a pigeon. So far, he's being quiet. Hopefully he will stay quiet throughout our whole session here, but just as a heads up if you hear noises. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. All right, so I work for the National Park Service, which is part of the Department of the Interior, and I work at Steamtown National Historic Site. What is the National Park Service? Well, the National Park Service, we protect and preserve special places in America, you know, whether it's natural beauty, like the Grand Canyon National Park, Yellowstone National Park, or places that have special stories, special meanings to us, like Gettysburg National Military Park. Whatever is special and unique to this country, that is what the National Park Service does. We protect the resource, but we also tell the stories, the good and the bad, because there are some bad stories, unfortunately, and we can't ignore them. Now, I do want to start out very quickly by showing you this arrowhead. This is the symbol of the National Park Service. You will see it on our uniforms, and sometimes you'll see it on our hats as well. I just very quickly wanted to go over all the symbolism that you do see on the emblem. So the sequoia tree, represents vegetation. Sequoias are found out west, mainly in California. The bison represents wildlife. And mountains and water represent scenic and recreation. And then lastly, the shape of the emblem itself, it's an arrowhead. So that represents history and archaeology. And also, it honors the Native Americans who would use arrowheads to go hunting. So we also honor them as well. The National Park Service, you guys might know the actual natural parks like Yosemite National Park or Arches National Park. And it's pretty hard to believe, but there are actually over 400 units of the National Park Service. It's not just the natural wonders that we have in this country. You also have some that are a little closer to home, like Independence National Historical Park and Cabrillo National Monument, which is in San Diego, California, which is where I'm from originally. And all these different places have a special story to tell. And our job as park rangers is to let everybody know, like, hey, this is in your backyard. This is what, you can learn about. It is right here for you. Like I said, the National Park Service has 424 National Park Service sites. So it's not just national parks, it includes national monuments, national memorials, national seashores, national recreation areas. Did you know Pennsylvania has 19 National Park Service sites? The closest one to you guys is Independence National Historical Park, but then you have us, Steamtown National Historic Site, about 2 hours north of you guys. You've got the Delaware Water Gap, Upper Delaware, Gettysburg National Historical Park, National Military Park. So there's a lot of places that you guys can explore your history. And this map here just shows you where they're all located. And it's not just the United States, but the territories as well. So there is a National Park Service site in every area. Up until a couple of years ago, Delaware was the only state that did not have a National Park Service site. They were the first state and had no national park. They now do. It's a first state national historical park. And here at Steamtown National Historic Site, we tell the story of railroading in the United States. It is a very important part of our history. Before, you had trains transporting goods. You would get to point B by, either horse and buggy or as quickly as you can walk. So it's pretty amazing to think how trains really changed our way of life. And at Steamtown, we were established October 30th, 1986. Although it was first a private collection that was up in first New Hampshire and then in Vermont, in Bellows Falls, Vermont. This private collection was created by a man named F. Nelson Blount. As a little boy, he loved trains. And he grew up and he still loved trains, but he had one advantage. He was a millionaire. So he started collecting all these trains and displaying them, and he named it Steamtown USA. So when it was displayed up there, you could do it was a precursor as to what you could do now at the park. You could go on train rides, explore the different cars, learn everything there was to know about railroading. Mr. Blount unfortunately passed away in the 60s, and the collection struggled to keep people coming and going. In Vermont, there were a couple laws that were preventing them from advertising. No billboards are allowed in Vermont. So, you know, back in the day, especially in the 80s, it's not like you could put in your iPhone GPS, hey, how do I get to Bellows Falls, Vermont? None of that. It's all your handy dandy roadmap to hopefully get you to that spot. So in an effort to keep the train collection going, they chose to come down here to Scranton. Not only was it easier to get to with all the highways that were around, Scranton was actually home to 5 railroad companies. So there was plenty of space to have this collection. The collection came down here in '84. By that time, the collection, or the Steamtown USA, declared bankruptcy, and they could no longer sustain the collection. A local congressman here in Scranton, Joseph McDade, he really liked this collection, and he thought it should belong to the National Park Service. So thanks to him, lobbying and everything, Steamtown National Historic Site was created. So here you'll see an aerial view of Steamtown National Historic Site. Consists of a roundhouse, a historic oil house, the locomotive shop, and plenty of other buildings. We are on the lands that used to belong to the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad, one of the 5 railroad companies that operated out of Scranton. You know, when railroading effectively ended in the 70s, this area was abandoned. What's very unique about this National Park Service site is that you got to see it be transformed. It's very rare that you get to see a National Park Service site be created before your eyes. So even though, yes, we were declared in 1986, the exhibits and all the core complex did not open to the public till 1995. You know, this was an abandoned area, so they had to do a lot of construction. And before the construction, do an archaeological dig to make sure we weren't disturbing anything that shouldn't be disturbed. So we, you know, built up the roundhouse to what it used to look like. We have 2 museums, a history museum and a technology museum, and the roundhouse itself. So when you come and visit, you can do like the history of railroading from, you know, here in Scranton and also throughout the country. See our historical steam engines inside the roundhouse, and go to the technology museum where you learn the science behind steam engines, how do they work, and all of that. So here, one of the key pieces of Steamtown is a turntable, and ours is a working turntable. It is not for decoration. It is 90 feet long, and a turntable pretty much would have a train come on board and go into the roundhouse to get fixed, whatever needed to be done. It was like a Jiffy Lube for trains. You go in, oil what needs to be oiled, tighten what needs to be tightened, and get back on the road because time was money. Ours is, like I said, a working roundhouse, and what the purpose of a turntable was to get the trains on. It didn't matter what direction they came in because the turntable would move. At first, it was manual, so 2 guys would be down there in the pit, you know, pushing it along so that it would turn. Ours is electric, although from time to time we do have to have people go down there and move it, which happened a couple weeks ago since it hasn't been used in a while. And here gives you an idea of what it looks like with the train on. Now, some of the trains in our collection do not fit on our turntable. It's a very tight squeeze, and we have to remove the railings around it so that it could properly move. This is one of our historical steam engines, the Nickel Plate Road 759. It does not run. The majority of the trains in our collection no longer run for various reasons. We have about 30 engines in our collection. 28 of them are steam, 2 of them are diesel. And out of the 30 trains, only 2 of them run. 1 diesel and 1 steam locomotive. This is the inside of our roundhouse. I tried to take the best pictures possible, but it is a little difficult. Nowadays, that's where our historical steam engines are stored, so you can see them. We have all sorts of engines. We have 2 Canadian engines as well. And some of the engines that we have are not necessarily ours, but because we have the space to store them, we have them. Like the one you see there, the DLNW 426, that one does not belong to us, but it is stored there because, well, we have the room. This is another one that it does not belong to us, but we borrow it from time to time. This is a historic diesel engine. We use this on some of our excursions. When we are running trains, this is one of the engines that we use to pull the train or the passenger cars along, which is pretty cool and unique. This was like the top of the line back in the day. And diesel is what eventually replaced the steam era. Once they realized that they could, oil was cheaper and they could go further without having to reload on coal and water, this was a better option for them. And this is our Baldwin 26, which was built in Philadelphia. And this is our historic steam locomotive that we use during our excursions. It is from 1929, and it's amazing. We shovel coal and it works just like it did almost 100 years ago. And it's really unique because even the passenger cars, they are from the era. We don't replace them, we don't repair them. And so it's very cool to be able to experience a train ride like people did, 100 years ago. You definitely feel the heat in the summertime here, although in the winter we don't run, mainly because there's no way to power or heat the passenger cars. But you definitely get the sights, the smell of that time period. And our Baldwin 26 does live inside the roundhouse, although right now it's getting, I don't want to say repaired. Yeah, it's getting repaired. Just like our modern trains, like Amtrak and everything, they have to go under the same regulations from the Federal Railroad Authority. So has to be in tip-top shape. It gets inspected every year. So, even though this is a historical engine, we play by the same rules as any other engine that runs right now. Now, this is one of our passenger car, or the executive car. This was the private jet of the day. Usually it would be, this belonged to one of the executives of the Erie Railroad. And whenever he felt like having a trip, he would just hitch it on to whatever line was going anywhere and invite his friends, and they would all travel in luxury. I tried to take a video of this, but it is a very tight space and the quality just wasn't that good. Now, this is a very interesting and I felt very appropriate to talk about as we're dealing with winter. This is one of the oldest pieces in our collection. It was built in 1898, and it's a rotary snow plow that worked for the Long Island Railroad on Long Island. It operated for 69 years, and they would use this to plow the railroad so that the trains could keep going from Long Island into New York City, Penn Station. They said that whenever it was operated, it would shoot the snow 13 feet off to the side. I can't imagine that much snow, and also the force of throwing that snow over there. This is scheduled to be cosmetically restored in the next couple years, so it'll be cool to see what it looked like in its glory days. Now, this is one of the crown jewels of our collection. This is the Union Pacific Big Boy, Union Pacific Railroad. 25 of them were built during the World War II era. Only 8 of them exist nowadays. A lot of them were scrapped for metal, and they are scattered throughout the country. Up until recently, they were all on static display, so they didn't move. They were just in their museums. A couple of years ago, they did restore one called, which was 4014, and that one runs throughout the country. That one was originally in Southern California. Union Pacific did go to all the different big boys throughout the country to see which one was in the best shape to repair and restore. Ours was one of the top tenders, but I don't think the National Park Service wanted to part with this train. So they ultimately picked the one that was in Pomona, California. Ours, 4012, is the one that's closest to its hometown. They were all built in Schenectady, New York, so not too far from here. Ours was built in November 1941. And thanks to World War II, they actually got an extension on life and they got to operate more. If it weren't for World War II, probably wouldn't have built as many and wouldn't have been used as much. Our Union Pacific clocked over 1 million miles before it was retired in 1962. It is pretty heavy. It is over 1 million pounds, and it's really long. Also, before I go on to the next slide, I do want to show you that I did purposely took this picture of it facing forward because it looks like it's off. I don't know if you guys noticed that it seems like the front part and the back seem like it's a little off. That's means that it is articulated, which means that the front part is hinged so that it could handle the curves. This type of engine was built for the West Coast. It was not built for the East Coast. There are more curves and mountains out west, so it was built for that. Wasn't really built to be operated out here. It's also one of the reasons why ours will remain on static display, besides the fact that it would cost a ridiculous amount of money to restore it. It has nowhere to go on the East Coast. You know, a lot of the bridges can't handle its weight. So it just, we did do a cosmetic restoration last year and it looks amazing. What was really cool is that we worked with Union Pacific, the people who did the restoration on 4014. So in a way, it's kind of slightly better because we learned from their, from working on 4014. So they would tell us, oh no, we use this, don't do this, use this color instead, use this stenciling. So it's pretty cool that, you know, the lessons learned from that engine were passed on to this one. So it's really neat. And it looks like it just rolled off the line from Schenectady. Now this train is known to be one of the biggest, largest in the world. It is 132 feet and change. To put it into perspective, it is longer than the first flight of the Wright brothers, which was 120 feet. Also, by having an engine this large, it needed less crew to work on the trains. Usually you would have several firemen shoveling coal into the firebox. It was not necessary with an engine like this. It would have a feeder that would automatically feed the coal into the coal box or firebox just to make it easier, because you know you have to pay people, and as the railroads progress, less people means less paying people to work on it. But nevertheless, you know, this is quite an amazing engineering feat, and it's huge. Like, you know, seeing it in pictures is one thing, but standing right next to it, you don't realize it was, and not just the big boy, but all these engines just feel so small. You don't realize how huge they were. And I don't know, I do consider trains to be like a work of art. I mean, they were all handmade. If something was broken, it's not like they went to the back, oh, here's a spare wheel or spare axle. It was all handmade, especially here in at the Delaware Lackawanna and Western Railroad. They had that locomotive shop, so they could make everything here, which made it easier and cut down on the process. All right, and now I have this video here of my favorite car, my favorite part of Steamtown, which is a railway post office car. As you can tell, I do love mail. I like to send postcards and stuff. And so with the railway post office car, it's really unique because, you know, prior to trains being here, how would you send a letter? How long would it take? It would take a very long time. And, you know, there was a cost based on how many pages you wrote and everything would determine the cost. But once you had the railway post office car attached to whichever line, you know, anybody could send mail, and you would find out, you know, news sooner than, you know, sending a letter. And it's like, oh, 3 months later, you found out that Aunt Bessie died. And it's like, well, it happened 3 months ago. But the railway post office system was actually created right after the Civil War in 1864. And it was just amazing to see how people just how their lives changed. And working for the railway post office was a strenuous test. You could only fail twice when you took the test. And especially in this region of Pennsylvania, you either worked in the coal mines or you worked on the railroads. So working for the postal service was not a bad job. It was a pretty strenuous job though. You worked 14-hour days with 9 other men in the car. You were together for about a week, maybe longer. So you would eat, sleep, work in this car. I'm sure in the summers it might not have been as fun because, well, there are some fans in there, but the ventilation I'm sure wasn't that great. Wintertime, I'm sure they were fine. They were able to warm up just fine. A lot of railroad companies didn't really care too much for the railway post office because, well, they weren't making any money on that car, but the government was paying that railroad in having that car attached. So as I play the video, you'll see everything on how they lived. So as you go in, of course, they have to go to the bathroom. So right there's the toilet. Yes, it opened onto the tracks. That was life. Got your ice box. And then over here, this is the hook that they would use to grab that mail. They didn't always stop at every town, but the mail still needed to be collected. So they would grab a bag and start sorting the mail. And here are all the different slots that they would use. And what's really cool about this is that depending on the route, it could change directions. It's like, oh, we're going west. Let's change the towns. And they were very good. To work for the railway post office car, you had to know like every single city and town within a certain radius. Like I said, it was strenuous, but it was well worth it. There was one story about a letter that was sent to Chief Hot Dog. They were trying to figure out who's Chief Hot Dog. And so after being on the road for a while, they figured out that the letter was for Supreme Court Justice Frankfurter. So they figured out, okay, this is who it's going to. What's really amazing about the railway post office is that it lasted up until the 80s. What really kind of put them out of service was, well, you had the machines sorting everything out, so you didn't need the people to be on the trains to sort the mail. You had the machines, you had trucks, you had planes that could transport the mail. The last route was from New York City to Washington, D.C. Union Station. So that was pretty bittersweet. Also, what's really fascinating about the railway post office car is that these people knew how to deliver mail before zip codes were invented. Zip codes were not invented till the 1960s. So for almost a century, these people knew that this letter was going to Riverside, California, not Riverside, Long Island. So it is pretty cool to see how they were able to think on their feet. All right, and that is the end of that. All right.
Okay, so I do have a question about that. So if they didn't stop to pick up the mail, and maybe you said this and I just missed it, how did they deliver the mail? Did they just like throw it out the window?
Yes. So yes, that was like, there was always someone on the platform waiting to receive the bag because, mail did have to be transferred over. That might not be the final destination for that mail. It would need to be sent to another town, another city. So yeah, it was like, you have to have really good catch. You definitely don't want that pile of mail falling into a puddle. That would be bad. So yes, they would definitely, one person would be on the hook to catch the mail that was hanging while someone else would throw the mail bag that needed to be sent to its next destination.
Hey, I'm surprised people got their mail, but I'm glad they did.
Yeah, and like I said, obviously if it was stopping like in a major city,
Mhm.
yes, it would stop and everything would be transferred. And it wasn't just letters, but also boxes. Like they were at the end of the video, did see a much bigger containers, which is where packages would go and everything. Railway post office employees were armed because some cargo was valuable. And you see all those Western movies, they're always trying to rob the train. Usually was a post office car because they had all the valuable cargo. Any mail that was valuable. So they were armed.
All right. So at this point, we're opening it up. If anyone has any questions, you can either put it in the chat or unmute yourself and say it. I would like you to, can people visit the site right now? Are you open to come, and how we do that?
Absolutely. We are open 7 days a week from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. The next holiday that will be closed is Veterans Day. We're only closed 3 times a year: Christmas Day, New Year's Day, and I think it's Veterans Day. But still, we won't be closed. What's that? Oh, Thanksgiving. I'm sorry, it's Thanksgiving that we're closed. So we, definitely don't have to worry about any closures. Although when there is bad weather, we might have delays. So always go to our nps.gov website or any of our social media accounts to check if we're open or if we have delayed opening. Because right now, with the weather coming up, we might be closed. It just depends. But it's always good to check our social media accounts or website. How did we transport that giant locomotive to Steamtown, the big boy? It was not powered on its own steam. It was towed down here. They actually had to double check and make sure that not only it could come down here, but that the bridges could support its weight. And so lots of logistics went into that, bringing it down here. And so it originally was by the University of Scranton for a while, and then it needed to move because the bridge was starting to get a little too heavy for the bridge. So then they moved it to one of the locations that on the property. Well, that's very cool. Yeah, very cool that you got to see the collection up in Bellows Falls. Yeah, it is very hard to protect 30 engines. If you guys ever have been to Steamtown, or if you ever guys do come, a lot of our engines have seen better days, the ones that are in the rail yard. We are one of 400 sites of the National Park Service, and there's just not enough money for all the sites to cover everything. It is one of the struggles of the National Park Service. There is a massive backlog. We do try to protect our rolling stock as best as possible. But it's at least it's not scrapped for metal. We're able to see a lot of these trains in person instead of a video or a book or a photograph. So it is pretty cool to see them up close, even if they're not in the best shape at the moment. So and in regards to visiting Steamtown as well, everything is open right now, except for the Technology Museum, but that should be opening up shortly in a couple of weeks. We don't have any. Usually we have some locomotive shop tours. At the moment we're not doing them. It's all just depends on what's going on with current events. Usually we haven't run trains for several years, but when we do, it's usually from May to October. We have short train rides within the park, and then we have some excursions where we go. We leave the city of Scranton. The Trolley Museum is not part of the National Park Service, but they are on our property. They are run by Lackawanna County. So they're on the other side of the parking lot there. More information, I will put in the chat box our website, so you can find more of the information as to where the park is located, how to get here, and you can plan your trip. I will be here Tuesday to Saturdays.
What's your favorite part about working at that specific park?
Well, I can really appreciate how trains changed our way of being. just the simple fact of being able to transport, fresh milk from the country into the big cities and stuff, or visiting relatives. Actually just started watching the show The Gilded Age on HBO Max, and they were talking about the Lehigh Valley, and I'm like, oh, I recognize that railroad, but also just how, the journey it was. And even though, yes, it seemed like a very long journey to get from point A to point B, it was still a lot quicker than being on a horse and buggy. And then eventually, as more trains and more people got on them, it just became a quicker ride. Like I mentioned, Justin, train rides are from May to October. So as of right now, we're not running anything. It still just depends how everything goes with the pandemic. Unfortunately, that does affect us a lot. We are a federal facility. We are part of the US government. So we do have to adhere by the same rules that every other government entity does. Oh, and the best part about Steamtown, we are free. You don't have to pay to come visit us. Some parks have admission fee, we do not. There is a fee when you ride the trains, but as of right now, since we don't know what's going on with that, anything you can visit is free. Scranton Flyer route. I don't know anything about that, I'm sorry. I could find some information from some of my other coworkers and then give it to the librarians to pass on to you, if that's okay. We do not have any trains from Honesdale. Honesdale has their own train stuff up there, so they would have that there. Our trains, our main trains are, we actually don't have many local trains. We only have one that belong to the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western. So unfortunately, it's not complete, unfortunately. But Mr. Blount, he just collected whatever he could find that wasn't scrapped. Like we have a Boston and Maine that was known as the Constitution. We have that. We're in the process of restoring it to operation so that we can use it on our excursions, because people want to go on a steam train, on a ride anywhere. Unfortunately, our little green Baldwin 26 cannot go long distance. That type of train was made to only work in the rail yard. So just moving, trains and pieces here and there. It wasn't built for long distances.
When you do have the train rides, how long are they? Is it?
So the ones that we do within the park, they're about 30 minutes long. We go from Steamtown National Historic Site to the University of Scranton and back. On Sundays, we have a longer excursion that goes to Naog Park, and you see the waterfall that's right there. That's about 45 minutes long. And then when we have excursions, we have some that are a couple hours away. We go to Moscow, Pennsylvania, mainly here in the local area. We go up to Carbondale. The furthest train ride that we have is to the Delaware Water Gap, and that is an all-day affair because we're not going fast. We're maybe going like 40, 45 miles an hour. We can't go too terribly fast, especially on the weekends. There are regulations. We do share the line with the local freight company, the Delaware Lackawanna, so we are restricted in how fast we can go and where to go.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions? Okay. It doesn't seem like we have it. So it looks like we're going to be just ending a little early tonight, which is fine. If you do have any information that you want to pass on to us so we can pass on to our patrons, we would love that. We will be sending out this recording. So if you would like to watch this again afterwards, feel free. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight, and just check our calendar on ivpl.org for more programs we have coming up. So we have them on a lot of different topics like local history, not so local history, and then just all these different things. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you in the library or online at some point. Have a good evening, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Flora.
You're welcome.